Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Ruby, this is Ruby Read, and today I want to talk to you about all the books that I read in August. This has quickly become one of my favorite videos to make because I get to really think about the books that I read and how they connect to each other and relate to all the other books I've read. It gives me such a dedicated moment to connect books and me and all together. And obviously I also have been really valuing this creative outlet where I get to draw in my journal something that to me represents the book, or something that connects me to the story, or something that I loved from the story, even when I maybe didn't like the story, as we will maybe encounter. So I have this little journal that I made almost a year ago, I guess. And for the last couple of months, I have been creating a 2-page spread for every book that I read and then sharing them with you. So in a few moments, we will step into some process videos and I will talk to you about the books. Before the fun begins, I just want to say that if you like this concept, if you like this video, please consider giving it a like and a subscribe and leaving a comment below, maybe letting me know what your favorite book that you read in August was. I think it will be clear which one my favorite was. The love that you guys have been giving me for these videos has been really amazing, and I'm so grateful. So I'm really excited to open up my journal for you once again and show you what I read. So let's go. The first book is Just Like Home by Sarah Gailey. Oh boy, what a way to start the month. This is a haunted house book by an author who I generally really like, so I was pretty excited. It's about Vera, who has returned to the house she grew up in because her mother's dying and wants her to be there to wrap things up. The whole thing is so tense. Vera keeps alluding to the things her father did in the house and what happened after, but she also keeps thinking about how much she loved him. So we also get glimpses into Vera's childhood where this mysterious thing her father did is slowly revealed, and we get to know more about some of the weird stuff that's going on in this house. I loved the first half of this book. There was such good tension. It was mysterious. It was spooky. I was actually afraid a few times. Couldn't ask for more, right? Wrong. When the final reveal happens, my jaw dropped in outrage. I was so disappointed. I was betrayed by this author. It felt like such a cop-out to me, and honestly, I wish that I hadn't read the book. I wanted to give it 1 star, to be perfectly honest with you, but the first 60% was so good, I just couldn't do that. I do think that this is a book you either hate or you love, and I'm sad that I hated it, but I hope that many more out there will love it. I'm just still so mad. For my journal, I actually drew my childhood home, and then I used these pink and red colors to kind of call back to the cover of the book. And this was great because I always want to draw houses, but I never do because you know what? It is tricky. I gave this book 2 stars. The next book is Record of a Spaceborne Few by Becky Chambers. This is the 3rd book in the Wayfarer series, and in this we follow a handful of humans. Some of them are living on the Exodus fleet, which is the main fleet of spaceships that let the humans leave their failing planet hundreds of years before. And one of them is a grounder, someone born on a planet, who travels to the fleet to try to make a life there and kind of connect with his ancestors. And another perspective comes from an alien who is visiting the fleet and writing an anthropological piece about the life that they live there. The thing about the fleet is that everything has a use and everyone has a home and food to eat. It's a very controlled and cyclical environment because that was the only way that it could work. And it's sustainable first, comfortable second. So this book explored loss and grief, both personal and collective, and how such a close community handles tragedy. It was interesting to get a look at the community from the outside analytical perspective and to think about how a closed community in a hostile environment would need to cooperate above all else, and how that attitude lingers for generations. This is my lowest rated read from the series so far at 3 stars because 2 of the perspectives I really hated reading. One of them was a teenage boy, he's angry at the world, it's all unfair, etc., etc. Very relatable to teenagers everywhere, but I hated being in his headspace. It was so frustrating. And the other one was just a character I didn't like. I hated the stupid things that they did, and then I felt bad for hating them by the end, but I still did. Anyway, one of the ways that life is able to be sustained on these ships is by the gardens. So they're filled with plants that renew the oxygen and store carbon, and they fertilize the beds with the composted remains of their dead, which I thought was honestly very beautiful. So I painted this imagined space garden with just like a black starry void outside the window. And yeah, I did give this book 3 stars. The next book I read was A Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes, another sci-fi. I'm really in my sci-fi era still. I read this book for the Shelf This Book Club. I'll link some stuff about that below. This book was weird and a bit outside of my normal genre range, but I think that made it fun. It's a science fiction story set primarily on spaceships, but aside from the gravity stuff, they could just as easily have been regular ships. The story is initially at least told in 2 timelines. So one is present day, where Claire is being interrogated about the events that led to her mysterious rescue and her missing crew. And the other is the slow unfolding of how exactly her satellite repair crew stumbled upon a luxury space cruise ship that has been lost for 20 years. The missing ship was a huge deal because it was so filled with luxury, and also all the passengers were rich and famous. It's very Titanic. So Claire and her crew decide, okay, yes, let's board the ship on some flimsy excuse, and then they get to find out what the heck happened there. And what they find on the ship is bloody and horrible, and without the artificial gravity on, it is spooky with everyone floating around with knives and stuff. Big yikes. This book did have me actually scared at one point, but overall it wasn't super memorable story-wise. And I chose for my journal to try to capture a little bit of how the inside of the ship looked with all the luxurious stuff and also bloodied weapons floating around. It still looks really unfinished. I just didn't know what else to draw, and also I didn't care enough about this book to really put in the work. I gave it 3 stars. The next book I read was The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. Have you ever heard of generational trauma? Because you're about to. This book follows Rosalie Ironwang through her life. She is the seed and the seed keeper. There was something so satisfying in this book about lying dormant until the conditions are just right for you to grow into who you are. We follow Rosalie through childhood, motherhood, widowhood, learning to garden and working as a journalist, and the fraught encounters that her and her farmer husband and their community have with a predatory seed and pesticide company. If you know, you know. There were chapters from the perspectives of her activist friend, but also her ancestors, telling the story of how they were driven out of their homeland and how they found their way back to it. So the story is about the women of this family who keep the seeds, who save something from the past so that there might be something for the future. It wrecked me. In my journal, I drew some corn stalks. Her and her husband have a corn farm, and I intended to make the letters look like they were made of beads, like how the cover of the book has all this beadwork on it, but I don't really think that worked, and that is fine. That's fine. I gave this book 5 stars. Absolutely wrecked. Okay, then I read The Nature of Nature by Enric Sala. This book is an excellent introduction to environmental preservation, understanding biodiversity and ecosystem functions. Enric is a marine biologist, but he explores ecosystems on land as well as at sea in this book. The main argument being made in the book is that the environment needs to be protected, not just because it is beautiful, but because it supports all life. He dives deep into the economic benefits to be gained from every avenue of preservation, effectively putting a price tag on ecosystem services to different industries and comparing the costs of protection with the profits that can be gained in as little as 10 years. Hint, it is a lot. I did like how this book really tried to have a positive outlook, and I know that money is what moves politics and policy, and they need to move, so I hope that this book finds its way into some of those hands. And I also think that it was a very accessible text. Anybody could read and understand this book, so that's a huge bonus when a lot of these issues can seem hard to maybe understand from like the bottom up. Anyway, I did another little collage with my Viking Cruise catalog for this journal. Love that for me. I gave the book 3 stars. Finally, the last book that I read was Cult Classic by Sloane Crosley. This was a weird one. This book follows Lola as she navigates the tension in her current relationship while also running into all of her exes on the same block in New York City. Eventually, the exes showing up becomes more than a coincidence, and her own boss might be involved or he might be in a cult. This was a sarcastic and funny look at how relationships linger, and heartbreak isn't just an ending, it's like a whole thing on its own. I found Lola to be mostly funny, and the tone of the book was snarky and surreal, which was fun. I think the book could have more appeal to someone with more of a turbulent romantic history. I just don't have enough exes or enough fraught relationships to really engage with her experience. And honestly, I found it very annoying. Overall, I did like it, but it was nowhere near as good as its cover. And I tried to replicate the cover here with medium success, I would say. I give this book 3 stars. And those are the 6 books that I read in August. So once again, thank you so much for watching. I hope that you had a good time. I know I did. And if you don't want to miss next month's wrap up, make sure that you're subscribed. And that's all for me today. So I'll see you back here next week for another video. Thank you so much. Goodbye.